My name is Blake. I grew up in a family in South London that believed, if you worked hard enough, kept your head down and followed the rules, that the system would work for you. That was the belief. Work hard, stay out of trouble, get your education, and things will be okay. I watched my mum do everything right. And I saw how quickly stability can disappear. So when I'm talking about sovereignty, I'm not talking about politics. I'm talking about protection, real protection. Not protection that depends on a job. Not protection that depends on approval. Not protection on somebody else's system holding steady. I was looking for that real protection. I'm talking about that kind of protection that doesn't evaporate when the economy dips. That's where the energy comes from. I'm not angry. I'm just here trying to understand something, Like, why is it? Why do so many of us do exactly what we're told? And it still feels like we are surviving, not building. And that's why I want to talk about education, not negatively, but just honestly. Because education shapes the way you see the world without you even realizing it. And when you grow up working class in South London, school really feels like that one shot, that one ticket out of here. You're told, focus, stay disciplined, get your grades, get your degree, and you'll be safe. You'll be different from the chaos. You'll be stable. For a lot of us, that message, it hits deep because we've seen instability up close. We've seen money stretched thin. We've seen stress in our parents' faces. We've seen what happens when income disappears. So education, it feels like armor. Here's the question I had to sit with. Armor for what? Because school teaches you how to pass those exams. It teaches you how to hit targets. It teaches you how to meet expectations. It teaches you how to compete. School doesn't teach you how to own. You don't learn how to acquire land. You don't learn how housing markets actually function. You don't learn how banks really assess risk and how they lend in the way that they do. You don't learn how to build industry. You learn how to qualify. Qualify for a job, qualify for a salary, qualify for a mortgage, qualify for debt. And qualifications, I bet, it feels like progress until you've lived in London. Now, let's talk about London properly, okay? The average house prices is around $500,000. That's 500,000, that's 500K. Even if you're not buying in Central, even if you're looking at outer boroughs, it's still out of reach for most young people earning average wages. It's near enough impossible. Let's break it down. A typical lender lends 4 to 4.5 times your income. So that means, if you're earning 35,000 a year, which most graduates are on, you're looking about borrowing 150K. That's 150,000. You can't get much in London in outer boroughs for that money. And then you need to think about your deposit. Now, if we're talking about the 500,000 we were speaking before, you need 10% minimum. That's 50 grand. How many 25-year-olds have 50,000 just lying in their bank accounts? I don't think so. And this is where the reality sits. When we talk about the rents now, rents in London sit comfortably between 1,500 to 2 grand. That's pounds, bro. A month. It's crazy, bro. That means half your income goes before you've even started living. Energy bills higher than they were a few years ago. Food is higher. Transport is not cheap. And we're still out here telling young people to work hard to get a degree? Are we crazy? I know someone with a law degree stacking shelves in Tesco. That's not disrespect. It's exposure. Exposure to the systems that we're in at this moment in time, because that wasn't the promise. The promise was security. But what happened over the last 20 years? University attendance expanded massively. Degrees became normal. Everybody got a degree. Ownership didn't expand with that. So now what do we have? We have a generation educated but not secured. They're qualified, but they're not protected. Working, but not building anything. And you know, these questions is when I had to ask myself something deeper, okay? What if education was never designed to make us sovereign? Maybe it was designed to make us useful. And useful means you just fit into somebody else's machine, structure, system. Sovereign, what I'm trying to teach, allows you to function without it. Now, if we zoom out, this is not just London. This is a global issue. Across Africa, highly trained doctors and nurses often leave for Europe, the UK, or North America. Why? Because wages and infrastructures are stronger there. Romania, where I'm resided now, has experienced long-term outward migration of engineers, medical staff, and highly skilled workers. Where? To Western Europe. And also the Caribbean. Our entrepreneurs, our nurses, our doctors, where do you think they're all going to? The diaspora. The 6th region of Africa is full of skilled professionals who are trained at home and then leave to go abroad. This isn't emotional, this is structural. Home countries invest in education just so the stronger economies can absorb them. For the individual, yeah, it makes sense. Better pay, more stability, better services. But you know, here's the part that nobody wants to sit with. If the most capable people leave and don't reinvest back home, who builds home? Who builds the infrastructure? Who builds the housing market so locals can access? Who builds local banks so they can lend to local businesses? Who builds the industry so the young people don't need to leave in the first place? And you know, this is personal for me. My grandparents came over to London in the Windrush generation. They came because Britain needed help rebuilding after the war. They came to work. They came to build. They believed that opportunity lived here. But even that story needs nuance. They came to rebuild Britain. Did Britain rebuild them? Rebuild us? No. Or did they work inside a system that gave them just enough, but never ownership? And now, my people, we are 2-3 generations down in this shit. And we're still working, still participating, still renting, still hoping that this system will hold steady. You know, that's not protection. That's conditional inclusion. Completely different. And I say this as someone who did not grow up sheltered. I was a smart kid. You know, I understood school, but I also made my money on the road. I flew solo. I understood 2 systems at one time. The formal system, you know, degrees, CVs, corporations, compliance, and the informal one, where I had to hustle, leverage, understood the risks versus the rewards. And what I learned early was this: the people who own infrastructures, they don't rely on permission. The people who don't own it, they do. And that's when this manifesto started forming in my head. This truth, belief, that came to me like this epiphany, like a sudden realization of real truth. The world we live in was built on systems of extraction. Extraction of land, extraction of labor, extraction of resources, extraction of identity. We were told that integration was freedom, that education would protect us, that migration was progress, and consumption was a form of success. But let me break it down for you. Integration without ownership is dependency. Education without infrastructure is export. Migration without return is drain. Consumption without production is an illusion. If London, one of the richest cities on this earth, is unaffordable to the young people born in it, that tells you something. If your degree doesn't guarantee placement, if wages don't match housing, if stability depends on everything running perfectly, that tells you something. Education, all it does is prepares you to enter the strongest system available at the time. It does not prepare you to build one. And this is why this episode matters in my manifesto, episode 3. Because if education only trains us to leave, whether that's physically or mentally, then we will keep exporting our strengths. We will keep building other people's economies. We will keep renting in the same cities that we grew up in. Nothing's changed. We will keep confusing participation with power. And I'm not saying like don't migrate. I'm not saying don't explore. I'm saying don't disconnect. Don't forget where we came from. If you gain skills abroad, think long term. If you earn money abroad, convert that into ownership somewhere that's meaningful. And if you're part of the 6th region, the diaspora, think about reinvestment instead of sending remittances. Remember, remittance keeps people afloat. But reinvestment now, that builds infrastructure. Because what I'm talking about, sovereignty, is practical. Land that feeds you, industry that employs you, finance that builds you, institutions that protects you, culture that penultimately stabilizes you. It doesn't mean being one crisis away from total collapse. It means not depending entirely on systems that can withdraw permission at any time. We are not here to shout. We are not here to destroy. We are here to build intentionally, strategically, not overnight, generationally, because we can do it. We don't beg for inclusion. We don't ask for recognition. We don't romanticize and live in the past. We construct the future, because power built slowly lasts so much longer than power seized loudly. And that's why this line matters, guys. You don't overthrow systems. You outgrow them, my people. You outgrow them by building alternatives that work. You outgrow them by owning more than you rent. You outgrow them by redirecting ambitions towards foundations and not just paychecks. Education should produce builders. Builders of land systems, builders of housing, builders of local finance, builders of industry, builders of institutions. Until education aligns with sovereignty, we will continue exporting our strengths. Episode 1 was identity. Episode 2 was the systems. Episode 3 is education. And if we don't rethink what education was for, we will keep qualifying to participate in systems we don't control, instead of building systems that protect us. That's the difference, and that's the work. In the next episode, my people, we're gonna talk about migration directly. We're gonna talk about this structurally with no emotion, just giving you plain Jane, keeping it real. Because once you understand how labor flows from weaker economies to stronger ones, you start asking a better question. Not where can I escape to, but what am I building that lasts? And that's where sovereignty begins. And this is the part I want to engrave in your minds. You don't overthrow systems. You outgrow them.